I stood in front of my bedroom mirror last Tuesday evening, and for the first time in 25 years, I was getting ready for someone who wasn't my husband. My hands were trembling as I reached for a perfume I hadn't worn in years, and I had to sit down on the edge of my bed because the weight of what I was about to do suddenly felt overwhelming. Maybe you've been there too, or maybe you read there right now, staring at the possibility of intimacy with someone new after decades of knowing exactly how one person is breathing sounds in the darkness, how they take their coffee, how they fold their clothes. The thought of learning someone else's rhythms, of being vulnerable with unfamiliar hands, of starting over when you thought you were done with firsts. There is something we do and talk about enough in our age group, what it feels like to rediscover romance. And intimacy after a long marriage ends, whether through divorce or loss. The world seems to think that desire and connection are a young person's territories, but I'm here to tell you that's simply not true. What I learned that night and in the weeks that followed might surprise you. And I hope it gives you permission to feel whatever you're feeling about this tender, complicated part of starting over. Let me tell you what no one prepared me for, and what I wish someone had told me before I took that leap into the unknown territory of loving again. The first thing that hit me was how foreign my own body felt. After 25 years with the same person, I knew exactly how to move, where to place my hands, what felt comfortable and familiar. But suddenly, everything I thought I knew about intimacy felt like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. I remember standing in that hotel room we decided neutral territory felt safer than either of our homes, and realizing I had no idea how to undress in front of someone new. Do you turn away? Do you leave the lights on? 25 years ago, these weren't decisions I had to make consciously. But at 58, every choice felt monumental and terrifying. The vulnerability was unlike anything I'd experienced since I was a teenager. This wasn't just about physical nakedness. It was about exposing decades of changes, of gravity's effects, of scars and stretch marks that told the story of a life fully lived. I caught myself apologizing for things I'd never thought twice about before. "I'm sorry, I'm not 25 anymore," I whispered, and he stopped everything to look at me with such kindness that I nearly cried. He was 62, recently widowed after 30 years of marriage. His hands shook too. His body told its own story of time and experience, and somehow in that moment of mutual uncertainty, we found something beautiful. We were both scared, both wondering if we remembered how to do this, both carrying the invisible presence of the loves we'd lost along the way. What struck me most was how different everything felt, and I don't just mean physically. With my husband, intimacy had become comfortable, predictable, efficient even. We knew each other's bodies like familiar songs. But this was like learning to dance to entirely new music. There's a tenderness that comes with being intimate with someone who understands loss, who knows what it means to have loved deeply and to have that love change or end. We moved slowly, carefully, checking in with each other, not just about physical comfort, but about emotional safety. "Are you okay?" became a refrain that meant so much more than just the obvious. I found myself grieving in unexpected moments. Not for my marriage exactly, but for the simplicity of knowing someone so completely that words weren't necessary. With this new person, I had to use my voice in ways I've forgotten, to say what I wanted, what felt good, what I needed. After decades of wordless understanding, having to communicate everything explicitly was both exhausting and strangely liberating. The guilt was something I hadn't anticipated. Even though my marriage had been over for 2 years, even though I had every right to seek connection and love, I felt like I was betraying something sacred. I kept thinking about my wedding vows, about the life I promised to share with someone else, about whether I was dishonoring that history by creating new memories with different hands, different lips, different whispered words in the darkness. But then there were moments, his laugh when I admitted I'd forgotten how to flirt, the way he held my face when I cried a little because it felt so good to be touched with intention again. The morning conversation over coffee where we talked about our grown children and our fears about dating at this age, that reminded me I wasn't betraying anything. I was honoring the part of myself that still believed in connection, still craved intimacy, still had love to give and receive. The logistics were almost comical when they weren't mortifying. I'd forgotten about the awkward negotiations, whose place, what time, how to say goodnight when you're not sure if you're staying or going. I'd forgotten about the vulnerability of asking for what you want, of admitting you're out of practice, of laughing when things don't go perfectly because you're both learning each other's bodies like new instruments. There's something profound about choosing intimacy at this stage of life. It's not driven by hormones or the desperate need for validation that fuels younger relationships. It's a conscious decision to be vulnerable, to risk rejection, to say yes to pleasure and connection despite everything you've lost along the way. I learned that my body, even at 58, even with its imperfections and changes, was still capable of surprise, of desire, of joy. I learned that emotional intimacy can happen faster at our age because we know ourselves better, because we've learned what matters and what doesn't, because we're not afraid to be honest about our needs and our fears. That first night wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, tender moments, moments when we both laughed at ourselves and each other. There were moments when we stopped to just hold each other because the weight of being vulnerable with someone new felt almost too much to bear. But it was real and it was ours, and it reminded me that it's never too late to write new chapters in the story of who we are as sexual, intimate beings. If you're considering taking this step yourself, let me tell you what I wish I'd known. First, go slowly. Give yourself permission to feel everything. The excitement, the fear, the guilt, the grief, the joy. It's all valid. Second, communicate everything. Don't assume anything translates from your past experience. Ask questions, voice your needs, check in frequently. Most importantly, remember that your capacity for love and intimacy doesn't have an expiration date. You're not too old, too broken, too set in your ways. You're human, and humans are designed for connection. Whether this becomes something lasting or remains a beautiful chapter in your journey of rediscovering yourself, you deserve to explore what makes you feel alive and desired and cherished. The night I spent with someone new after 25 years of marriage taught me that courage is in the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and choosing love anyway. It's believing that you're worthy of tenderness, of passion, of someone learning your body and your heart all over again. If you're standing in front of your own mirror wondering if you remember how to do this, if you're worthy of this, if it's okay to want this, I'm here to tell you that you are and you do, and it absolutely is. If this conversation touched something in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. This community is a safe space for these honest discussions about love and life after 50. And if you found comfort in these words, please consider subscribing. We're all navigating these tender territories together. Until next time, be brave with your heart.